What's going on, you guys? Shiraz Ahmed here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about what to do as a Canadian citizen when you're living and working in the United States, or even when you're planning to do so. So stay tuned. Alright, welcome back, you guys. So, like I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be talking about more of the finance-related topics regarding moving from Canada to the United States. I'll actually have a video coming up in the next week on the non-financial aspects of moving, like how to apply for a visa or citizenship down the road, or even what to do about moving your car over the border. So make sure that you're subscribed and that you hit the bell icon so that way you'll be able to see that video as soon as it comes out. So getting back to the topic of the day, discussing Canadians who decide for various reasons to live and work in the US. Now, I'd actually done a video quite a while back on moving from Canada to the United States, so you can also check that out here. But since you guys seem to really like that one, I thought I'd dig in a little bit more detail on some of those topics. Alright, so maybe you're a doctor who decided to practice in the US, or maybe you got that job of your dreams from one of the top tech firms out of Silicon Valley, like Meta or Google or Amazon. Now, almost all of these companies are based in the US, with a lot of them being actually based in California, although Tesla is starting to break that mold by moving to Texas. But that being said, let's talk about California for now. So now, what Canadian who grew up surviving minus 30 and 40 Celsius winters doesn't secretly dream of living and working in California? Now, if that sounds like you, here's some things that you're going to want to be aware of. You will, of course, have to pay taxes. You're living in the US, you're working in the US, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. You're going to have to pay taxes. Now, there's some good news here, though. The taxes that you'll pay in the US are almost certainly going to be lower than what you're paying in Canada. Of course, depending on what province you live in and what your marginal tax bracket will be. Now, you may have some additional out-of-pocket costs to be aware of. For example, health insurance. Kind of a good idea in the US, right? So it's actually important to consider all of these variables when you're assessing your potential offer from your US employer. So Canada and the US have a long-standing tax treaty. So as long as you report and pay your taxes in the US, you shouldn't have to pay any additional taxes on the Canadian side. Now, another thing you want to be aware of is you likely won't be able to contribute to an RSP going forward. RSP room is actually only grown when you have certain types of earned income in Canada. You're not in Canada anymore, so you likely won't be earning any more additional room from working up here. Now, there's obviously some exceptions to this rule. For example, if you're still earning employment income or business income from a Canadian source. But of course, this is a relatively rare circumstance. And again, if you want to make sure that your tax side of things isn't being mucked up by it, this may or may not be a good idea. So if you already have an RSP, then you don't necessarily need to close it. You can keep it open. But you'll probably have some restrictions placed on what you can do while you're considered a non-resident. Now, it's also important to set up your RSPs appropriately if you leave, just in case. Now, a caveat will be as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, there are 13 US states that do not follow the Canadian-US federal treaty for tax purposes. California, for example, is one of those 13 states that doesn't follow the treaty. So your accounts will be taxable at the state level. Not federally, just state. So make sure that you look at this a little bit closer when you're planning on moving to one of those states. Okay, now moving on. You also won't be able to contribute to your TFSA going forward. TFSA limits are actually based on residency. So if you're not a resident, you won't earn any additional room in that given year. So if you've had a TFSA prior to leaving Canada, you can technically keep it, but its tax-exempt status is not recognized in the US. So it might not be worth doing so going forward. Now, since my last video on this topic, there's been some new developments. Based on a recent case law, there's similar accounts in Mexico, for example, and some accountants and CPAs are actually advising their clients to actually keep their TFSA. Now, the issue previously was that these accounts were considered foreign trusts as far as the IRS is concerned, which is a big no-no. You typically have to file an additional tax form such as a 3520 or 3520-A. But now, some professionals are claiming that this may no longer be required. So now, some CPAs are on side with this, some are not, but what I would encourage you to do is seek out a qualified cross-border CPA and get their counsel and opinion on whether or not this is something that you can look at for yourself come tax time. All right, so another positive is that you will be able to contribute to U.S. retirement savings accounts. Now, you'll likely have a 401k plan of some kind through your employer. This will roughly act as a bit of a replacement of the RSP account that you had here in Canada. Now, there's actually another retirement vehicle as well. It's called an IRA, or an individual retirement account. This is kind of like an RSP as well, but the limits are significantly lower in the US. The main thing to remember here is with these types of accounts is that they can actually help reduce your taxable income, and they're great savings vehicles for retirement, especially if your employer doesn't do any matching. All right, another positive is that you will be able to access the Roth IRA account. If you're familiar with the TFSA in Canada, this one pretty much works the same way. In fact, I believe CRA modeled the TFSA based off of the Roth account originally. When you put money into this account, you don't get any tax deductions for making contributions. Now, on the other hand, when you take money out of the account down the road, you also won't need to pay taxes on it either. So this is great for a rainy day fund, additional savings for retirement, or even just, let's say, a vacation fund. Now, one last thing that you'll need to consider is that you'll likely have to move your non-retirement investment accounts to whichever country you're currently residing. So I always use the analogy, think of these like carry-on luggage. They have to come with you regardless of where you're going. So there are some tax implications for moving these accounts across the border, so please make sure that you have a good qualified cross-border CPA who understands your specific circumstance. All right, so hopefully you've gotten a quick crash course in what to do as a Canadian who's accepted a job in the US. Remember to subscribe to this channel. I try my best to put out some fun and informative videos every single week. Next week's video, we'll actually be talking about the non-financial aspects of the move. So please make sure you're subscribed so you can see that one when it comes out as well. So till next time, please stay safe out there, you guys, and bye for now.